Hi, this is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am the creator of Audio Secrets Training Event.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, international speaker, a phenomenal business editor for the Warren Buffett's brand, Steve Jordon. Steve Jordon writes for the Warren Buffett's brand, and in this interview, he breaks down in layman's terms how Warren Buffett and his great friend, his mentor, his coach, Charlie Munger, build the phenomenal brand Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway net worth is $143.688 billion. That is huge. Also, Warren Buffett's net worth is $66.7 billion. So this interview, Steve Jordon breaks down layman's terms how Warren Buffett built his phenomenal brand. He also breaks down layman's terms how Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are value-based investors and how they build their wealth and much, much more. So remember, this is not bullshit information. The correct information will change your situation. Wealthy people take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people take advice from broke people. But I love what Warren Buffett says. He says, pursue your passion and take action on your passion every day of your life. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes. In this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, international speaker, a phenomenal business editor. His name is Steve Jordon. This interview, it will change your life. So check it out.
Today, I have a wonderful person on the call. He's a great friend of mine. His name is Steve Jordon. And for those that don't know Steve, let me explain to each and every one of you about this incredible, phenomenal man. Steve Jordon is the lead reporter following Warren Buffett at the Omaha World-Herald and writes the newspaper's weekly Warren Watch column, which also is featured on Omaha.com. He also covers a variety of business-related stories, including health care and insurance. A 48-year veteran of the newspaper, Jordon has covered a variety of news beats, and for the past 35 years has specialized in business news, including 10 years as a business editor. Steve has worked and has been recognized by the University of Nebraska at Omaha, the Associated Press, the Society of American Business Editors and Writers, and the American Society of Newspaper Editors, among others. He is past president of the Omaha Press Club and president of the Omaha Press Club Foundation, and that is an awesome, impressive resume. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Steve Jordon to the show.
Hey Arthur, how's it going?
I'm doing great. It's getting better each and every single day. How you doing?
I'm good. We're good out here. It's great weather and raring to go.
All right, and where are you right now?
Sitting in the newsroom. We're doing stories for the weekend paper and trying to keep things under control in Omaha.
Oh, wow, that is absolutely phenomenal. To everyone that's listening on this show, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Steve Jordon is going to break down layman's terms about the Warren Buffett's brand. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, he's an Omaha guy, so we follow him pretty close. Has been here his whole career, and he loves the town and brought his business back to Omaha, even though he's a worldwide famous investor.
Now, what I'd like to know, Steve, and can you explain to the listeners in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Steve Jordon? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
All right. Well, I'm an Air Force kid, and born in West Virginia. My dad ended up here in Omaha when I was in high school, and so I stayed around, went to university here, got a journalism degree, and began working for the World-Herald when I got out of college. And I've done different things here, but mainly the business coverage, covering all of the things happening with the economy and the jobs in Omaha. And part of that is following Warren Buffett. He's got his company is called Berkshire Hathaway. It is an investment conglomerate worth somewhere in $80 billion or so. Well, that's probably small. His net worth is around $60 billion, and the company is worth some $300 billion, I think, by latest count. It's a company that owns a wide range of businesses, everything from Dairy Queen to Burlington Northern Railroad, and a lot of industrial companies, products like World Book Encyclopedia, and he's got some 80 companies that belong to Berkshire Hathaway, and he's acquired them over the years by reinvesting in capital, and that's his main job is to take money that Berkshire Hathaway makes, right around $1.5 billion per month, and reinvest that in new businesses that create wealth for the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. And you can be a Berkshire Hathaway shareholder if you want to. You can just buy the shares on the stock market through any way you want to, and you share in whatever Buffett's doing, whether it's good or bad. You can share in what he's done, what he's going to do in the future.
Now, from your own experience, Steve, I know that Charlie Munger is actually Warren Buffett's coach, and that's his business partner in the phenomenal brand that they build. From your own experience, can you explain to the listeners about the Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett's mindset when they are in the process of purchasing phenomenal companies?
Yeah, they met in the 1950s. They happened to be both from Omaha, but Charlie was living in California at the time they met. He came to town when his father died to wrap up his father's law practice. And while he was there, some people introduced the two of them. They thought they were guys that would get along because they're both very smart and real tuned-in guys, really a tremendous amount of brain power. They connected, and they realized that they did complement each other in the way they thought, and they had interesting ideas to discuss between them. So over the decades, it's been 50 years since they met roughly. Charlie's official title is vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, but he's really essentially a business partner, as you said, for Buffett. The two of them come up with business ideas, investment ideas, like a company that they might want to acquire, and they talk about it with each other, whether they recommend this. They look at the financial figures that they've got for a company, and they look at the industry that it's in, and then they decide whether what the price would be if they were to buy the company, and then make a decision to buy it or not. I could give you a quick example. Some years ago, Charlie Munger, his office is in Pasadena. In the same building, there was a young fellow who was an investment guy, and one of the companies he invested in was BYD Incorporated. It's a Chinese company that makes electric cars and batteries and that sort of thing. And Charlie learned from this guy from China that this might be a possible investment. So he talked with Buffett about it. They sent a guy over there to kind of look at it firsthand, and then they decided to invest and buy roughly 10% of that company. And so since then, they've been a 10% owner of BYD, and they kind of watch the Chinese electric auto market. The company now has a office out in California where they're trying to begin to sell their cars. And it hasn't been a great acquisition. It hasn't gone crazy. The Chinese stock market is kind of volatile. Things go up and down. But in that case, they're holding on to their investment in that company, thinking that at some point in the future there will be real breakthroughs as far as electric storage and electric vehicles and having batteries that you can store your electricity in. Wow. Instead of using the fossil fuels that are getting more expensive over the long term. So that's a kind of, and a lot of times they'll see something come up and one of them will say, "Oh, I don't think that's a good idea," and then they turn it down and reject it and go on to the next thing. So it's a matter of them considering the facts that they can find out, doing research, and then deciding whether they want to be a part owner or a full owner of a business or not.
Now, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, they are basically value investors.
Right. And it's an interesting definition. Charlie says, I don't know why you invest in something that wasn't valuable. So he's, but I guess there are different styles of investment. That doesn't mean that there's one necessarily that's the only one you should use. For instance, you can try to invest by looking at mathematics and have some formula in mind that if the stock price is X, Y, Z, and the earnings, the profits are so much, why then you buy something, and if it goes up, 2%, you sell it. And there's a lot of buying and selling that goes on. That's very short-term sorts of transactions. You buy something, it might go up. If it goes up, you sell, and then you go to the next thing. It's kind of like more like a game of chance, I guess you'd think. The value investing that they do, the cornerstone of it is to say, okay, I think of my investment not as a thing I'm going to sell after a little while, but as a thing that I would like to own for 20 years. And I think it's going to have a long-term value that will be shown in the stock price over 20 years. So when you do that, you have to evaluate the company in terms of the Buffett Munger model is it has a long-term record of profits. It has what they call a durable competitive advantage. In other words, if let's say I have a railroad, and it has a durable competitive advantage because you could give somebody $20 billion and say, okay, go build a competing railroad, and they couldn't do it. You can't acquire the land, you couldn't build the tracks, you couldn't hire the people, you couldn't buy all the locomotives. Railroads have almost a monopoly. They have some government regulation to prevent price abuse, but they really, they're the only game in town when it comes to hauling long distances, heavy commodities like coal or oil or cars or cargo. That's a business where there is a long-term competitive advantage, and that's why he invested in a railroad, bought that Burlington Northern Railroad. The other thing is for the average guy, is to make sure you understand what your investment needs are. For instance, my dad, he would never bother buying a stock that doesn't pay dividends because what he wanted was those regular dividends, whether they came quarterly or not. He figured that was the reason for investments, was to pay dividends. Now, Berkshire, for instance, pays no dividends. Instead of sending money back to their shareholders, they believe they keep the money in the company and use it to buy more businesses or invest in other things that are going to make money long term. So there's a difference in philosophy there. You need to, and Buffett's thought is if he runs out of ideas where he can't come up with a new investment idea, then I suppose paying a dividend would be a possibility. But he doesn't see that happening. He thinks if you look at things from a value standpoint, meaning what are the things that are going to be long-term valuable to you, you can keep coming up with ideas. Some of them may be bigger, some may be smaller, some may be faster to make a decision. Sometimes you may have to wait a while before you get the right kind of stock company to buy. But in the end, a value investor is going to find things that are going to have that long-term carrying value, long-term earnings value. Here's the thing, Arthur. It's fairly easy to explain, but it's not easy to do. You can understand it, but executing it is the trick, and that's where Buffett and Munger excel. Is they're able to, for the most part, take a look at the future and see what's going to be still valuable 10 years from now. That's why they didn't invest in the internet stocks back in the 90s, because they couldn't tell maybe they understand. They would say, "Oh, we don't understand it." What they meant was, they understand how a cell phone works, or how the internet works, or something like that, but they can't tell which company is going to be the lasting company 10 years from now. The illustration they use is everybody knows that automobiles are a very successful part of American life. Everybody's got one or two in their family. And so at the turn of the century, when the automobile was invented, say in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, there were dozens of car companies. So which one do you invest in? It was not easy. If you want to buy a Nash Rambler or a Hudson or something like that, that looked like a good car. But those guys are not around. Very few of the car companies lasted and succeeded. So you could say the internet was in its early stages. Lots of software companies, lots of this, lots of that. How do you know which one's going to be the long-term success? And so Berkshire just skipped that, and they got criticized for it because there were so many people made into millionaires by investing in tech stocks. Their response is, well, other people can do well investing too, but we're going to stick with our model of how we go about it, and we just couldn't fit those tech stocks into the way we think about things. So their style is not for everybody. If they also talk about you need a certain personality or a certain ability to be patient, to not worry about if your stock goes down 30% sometime. Don't think the world's coming to an end. If you have faith in your judgment that it would succeed in the long term, you hang on to it, and you maybe even buy more stock when the price goes down. That way, when it goes back up, you've made a bigger gain. It's an interesting philosophy, and Buffett particularly has been part of spreading that word among average investors, so that they know they have that option of adopting that kind of investment style.
Now, I know that Warren Buffett is a major shareholder in the CocaCola brand. Can you explain to the listeners what exactly do Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger actually look for when they are in the process of purchasing cash flow businesses?
Yeah, let's talk about the brand a little bit, because I would bet that you have never bought a Berkshire Hathaway. There's not you can't buy a thing that's a Berkshire Hathaway. Hang on a second. In other words, they don't put that brand on anything hardly at all. They finally came up with a brand that they use Berkshire Hathaway for. It's a real estate brand. You might see those in different cities around the country. Berkshire bought the old Prudential real estate franchise company, and now you see these little Berkshire brands around. But you can't go into a store and buy a Berkshire. You can't order a Berkshire on Amazon.com, because that's not a publicly known brand. But you have something like Coca-Cola. Remember, I said a good investment should, from their viewpoint, a good investment should have what they call a durable competitive advantage. Try to think of how you would create a brand to compete with Coca-Cola. What sort of advertising would you have to have that would, practically everybody in the world knows the Coca-Cola brand. It's very international. You can see Coca-Cola. I was in Siberia, and you can see Coca-Cola in the stores in Siberia. It's worldwide. It's in Africa. It's in all the continents. Not to mention the United States. That very brand, and maintaining that brand, gives Coca-Cola a competitive advantage. People go in somewhere and they say, "Well, I'd like a Coke." They don't go in there and say, "I'd like a Fanta," even though people know there's a Fanta brand, but what comes to mind is a Coke, because the brand has that presence around, and it's there's other kinds of brands that are maybe not as widely known to consumers, but they're still important brands. If you're an industrial company that ships your product, say on a train, say it's grain or it's oil or coal or automobiles that you manufacture, you need to know that Burlington Northern or Union Pacific or Norfolk Southern, those are all brands of railroads, and the railroad's customers know the brands that they can use, and they know their options. So that's a brand that's developed, and things that contribute to the brand, like fair pricing and on-time delivery in a railroad's case, not damaging your property when it's shipped, and the customer service they go to, all those add to the brand's strength. On the other hand, if a railroad is constantly late getting the cars delivered, and they have accidents because the tracks are poorly maintained, and all these other things, that hurts the brand, and so companies go to great lengths to protect their brands. Hang on a second, I got to do something here. We're working on a story. All right, I got it closed, Cindy. Okay, sorry about that. Brands can be damaged and brands can be enhanced, and think of remember the Tylenol scare from years ago? Somebody had put in poison in some pill bottles or something like that, and they were worried that the Tylenol brand would disappear. Well, the Tylenol people came up with sealed containers, and they really worked hard on restoring people's faith in that brand. That was a case where a brand was preserved. It's a difficult thing to make a brand. And it's interesting, you mentioned Warren Buffett and his brand, and Charlie Munger and his brand. Buffett's brand is kind of in a way divorced from his business. I mean, you've got his brand, I think, maybe means about three things. One is this investment philosophy that we talked about, the value investing. He's identified with that. He's identified with ethical business practices because he has tried to emphasize that in his career, and he's identified with philanthropy because he has pledged to give away like 99% of his wealth over either while he's giving some away while he's alive, and then the rest would go into foundations after he dies. So that's a brand. Like I say, you can't go buy you can't go buy a 2015 Buffett or buy one and put it in your pocket. There isn't any such product that carries that brand, but his name has become a brand just for the things that he does, the things that he talks about. Am I getting close to your topic here?
Yes, this is an incredible interview. I appreciate you coming on my show today.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Steve, can you explain to the listeners what was your thought process getting involved with the Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's brand, and how is Warren Buffett's personality?
Okay, you got two things there. I mean, we cover Buffett and Munger because they're local guys, especially Buffett. He's an Omaha person, and so we try to cover important people in Omaha and let the public know. When we have readers all over the world anymore with the internet, you can our website omaha.com gets about 500,000 hits a day, and so we've covered Warren. In fact, one of our reporters, a guy named Bob Dorr, wrote the first story about Warren Buffett, where he had heard that there was a guy in those days. This is the 1950s. Warren had some partnerships. He didn't have Berkshire Hathaway as a separate company. He had some partnerships where people just trusted him with their money, and he would invest it, and then every year he would report to them how they did. And Bob heard about this and heard that he was making big returns, and so he did a story about Warren that ended up interviewing him, interviewed some of his partners that he was investing for, and so we've covered Warren ever since then, going on 60 years, I think. And so over the years, different reporters have covered him. I ended up when I was business editor, one of the people working for me covered him, and then in later, more recent years, I've ended up doing that, and it was, it's something we wanted to keep track of. I think there's a lot of public interest in Buffett and what he does. And you mentioned his personality. I think that's part of the deal. He when he was a young man and a kid, he was I guess today you'd call him a geek. He was really mathematically inclined. He would keep track of, write down car license plates that went by his house. He would track. He was reading financial reports when he was 10, 11, and 12. What kind of kid does that? He was a very, very different sort of fellow, and he was afraid of getting up and speaking in public, for instance. So he sort of forced himself to take a speaking class where you learn how to talk in front of people. And now he says they can't shut him up. He really has he recommends that people learn how to talk and present their ideas in public. You present yourself when you're in the investment business, particularly. People need to trust you. I mean, they're giving you their money to do something with. They really need to trust you, and if you can present yourself in a way that's trustworthy and builds confidence in what you're doing, then you can be more successful. And he talks about that, communicating by writing and by speaking. He's got he appears on cable TV fairly regularly, and typically they just ask him questions. He responds about things that are going on. He known for having a good sense of humor. He talks about and every year he writes a lengthy letter to his shareholders. It's included in the Berkshire annual report, and lots of times there's little jokes and funny sayings in there. The reporters who write about him say he's got this homespun sense of humor, that sort of stuff. And like they bought Fruit of the Loom clothing company, and he said, I always wanted to get into women's underwear. He's not above making a little risque joke now and then, and he's a very agreeable, kind of likable guy. He's not judgmental. If there's somebody he doesn't get along with, he simply, I think, avoids them. Isn't confrontational. He doesn't seek out conflict or whatever. He likes to, and he has a wide circle of friends that he likes to be with and do things with when there's a chance to it. He recruits people for Berkshire's board of directors, and they're kind of a variety of people. Some are like him. He's 84. Some are elderly. Some are quite a bit younger. There's some women on the board. There's men on the board. There's some people from different industries. So he likes to get a variety of people involved in making decisions for Berkshire. People ask, well, where is Warren? Well, most of the time he's in Omaha, and most of the time he's working at his office. He does travel. The thing that separates the really rich people from you and me is they can get in a jet and fly somewhere and then come back before the day's over.
Wow.
So he has one of the Berkshire companies is called NetJets, and that is a company where instead of buying a plane and hiring a pilot and being worried about maintaining the plane and so forth, a person with healthy finances can buy a certain number of travel hours on that plane, and it's like a private plane for them. They buy, say 50 hours of flying a year.